Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Madhava ki jai, Shri Gaura Nitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. For the pleasure of their Lordship, Shri Radha Madhava, Ashtasaki and Panchatattva, Prahlad Nrsimhadev, this morning we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 2nd chapter, text 18. The prayer to Shri Radha Madhava is Madhava Madhava Vachi, Madhava Madhava Hrid Smaranti Sadhava Sarve Sarva Karyeshu Madhavaha. So let the Lord Madhava be within our words, Madhava Madhava Vachi, Madhava Madhava Hrid. Let Lord Madhava be within our hearts. Smaranti Sadhava Sarve, let we always remember Lord Madhava, Sarva Karyeshu Madhavaha. Let he always be the goal of our activities, the love of Lord Madhava to be the goal of our activities. So with this on mind, we'll try to recite Srimad Bhagavatam for their pleasure. So from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, again, chapter, 2nd chapter, text 18. Kindly repeat after me. Param, padam, vaiṣṇavam, āmananti, tat, yat, netīty, iti, atat, utsisṛkṣavaḥ, visṛjya, daurātmyam, ananya-sauhṛdāḥ, hṛdopaguhyā, arha, padam, pade, param padam vaiṣṇavam āmananti param padam vaiṣṇavam āmananti neti utsisṛkṣavaḥ neti utsisṛkṣavaḥ visṛjya daurātmyam ananya-sauhṛdāḥ visṛjya daurātmyam ananya-sauhṛdāḥ hṛdopaguhyārha-padaṁ pade hṛdopaguhyārha-padaṁ pade param padam vaiṣṇavam āmananti neti utsisṛkṣavaḥ visṛjya daurātmyam ananya-sauhṛdāḥ hṛdopaguhyārha-padaṁ pade Vaishnavas. Param, the supreme, padam, situation, vaiṣṇavam, in relation with the personality of Godhead. Āmananti, do they know tat, that, yat, which, neti, not this, netīty, not this, iti, thus, atat, godless, utsisṛkṣavaḥ, those who desire to avoid, visṛjya, giving it up completely, daurātmyam, perplexities, ananya, absolutely, sauhṛdāḥ, in goodwill, hṛdopaguhyā, taking them into his heart, arha, that which is only worshipable, padam, lotus feet, pade, at every moment. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The transcendentalists desire to avoid everything godless, for they know that supreme situation in which everything is related with the Supreme Lord Viṣṇu. Therefore, a pure devotee who is in absolute harmony with the Lord does not create perplexities, but worships the lotus feet of the Lord at every moment, taking them into his heart. In the Bhagavad Gita, Madhama, my abode, is mentioned several times, and according to the version of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, there exists the unlimited spiritual sky, wherein the planets are called Vaikunthas, or the abode of the Personality of Godhead. In that sky, which is far, far beyond the material sky and its sevenfold coverings, there is no need of the sun or the moon, nor is there necessity of electricity nor illumination, because the planets are self-illuminating and more brilliant than the material suns. Pure devotees of the Lord are absolutely in harmony with the Personality of Godhead, or in other words, they always think of the Lord as their only dependable friend and well-wisher. They do not care for any mundane creature up to the status of Brahma, the Lord of the universe. Only they can definitely have a clear vision of the Vaikuntha planets. Such pure devotees, being perfectly directed by the Supreme Lord, do not create any artificial perplexity in the matter of transcendental understanding by wasting time in discussing what is Brahman and what is non-Brahman or Maya, nor do they falsely think of themselves as one with the Lord, or argue that there is no existence of the Lord separately, or that there is no God at all, or that living beings are themselves God, or that when God incarnates himself, he assumes a material body. Nor do they concern themselves with many obscure speculative theories, which are in actually so many stumbling blocks on the path of transcendental understanding. Apart from the class of impersonalists or non-devotees, there are also classes who pose themselves as devotees of the Lord, but at heart maintain the idea of salvation by becoming one with the impersonal Brahman. They wrongly manufacture their own way of devotional service by open debauchery and mislead others who are simpletons or debauchees like themselves. All these non-devotees and debauchees are, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti, daurātmyas, or crooked souls in the dress of Mahatmas or great souls. Such non-devotees and debauchees are completely excluded from the list of transcendentalists by the presentation of this particular verse by Shukadeva Goswami. So the Vaikuntha planets are factually the supreme residential places called the param padam. The impersonal Brahmajyoti is also called the param padam due to its being the rays of the Vaikuntha planets, as the sun rays are the rays of the sun. In the Bhagavad Gita 14.27, it is clearly said that the impersonal Brahmajyoti rests on the person of the Lord. And because everything rests on the Brahmajyoti directly and indirectly, everything is generated from the Lord. Everything rests on him, and after annihilation, everything is merged in him only. Therefore, nothing is independent of him. A pure devotee of the Lord no longer wastes valuable time in discriminating the Brahman from non-Brahman, because he knows perfectly well that the Lord Parabrahman, by his Brahman energy, is interwoven in everything, and thus everything is looked upon by a devotee as the property of the Lord. The devotee tries to engage everything in his service and does not create perplexities by falsely lording it over the creation of the Lord. He is so faithful that he engages himself as well as everything else in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. In everything, the devotee sees the Lord, and he sees everything in the Lord. The specific disturbance created by a duratma or crooked soul is due to his maintaining that the transcendental form of the Lord is something material. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakavitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sarva Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. My humble obeisances to all assembled Vaishnavas. It is great pleasure to serve you in this way this morning in Sri Mayapur Dham. And this verse is also speaking about param, padam, transcendental abode of the Lord. So in Navadvip Dham, which is the most of all exalted holy places along with Sri Vrindavan Dham, it is great fortune to be here and to meditate on the transcendental abode and transcendental feet of the Supreme Lord. In Navadvip Dham, the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the one who always relished the mellows of devotional service with his devotees, especially by reciting and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And he has said that actually he had come specifically for that reason. Srimad Bhagavata Rasa Tattva Pracharana Krishna Tulya Bhagavata Janela Samsaram. He have appeared to preach Bhagavad Rasa Tattva, which is non-different from the Lord, Krishna Tulya Bhagavata, and in that way liberate the living beings from samsara. He has said that so many incarnations have come and given Vaidhi sadhana bhakti to bring living beings to transcendental situation, transcendental position, but this Vraja Bhakti, Vraja Rasa have not been given for a very long time. Therefore, he is coming and giving Raganuga Bhakti. Therefore, he is so unique. Therefore, this is Audarya Dham, because his mind is full of merciful, ecstatic emotions, Audarya Bhav. Usually, the Lord Krishna is never going out of Vrindavan, and therefore the mercy of Lord Krishna never goes out of Vrindavan. But because of Lord Chaitanya's mercy, we are getting that same in Navadvip Dham. The Audarya means the Anugraha and Priti. Anugraha is the mercy of Srimati Radharani, and Priti is her love for Krishna. When we combine these two, then we get the most merciful incarnation, Mahavadanyaya. So what is he giving? He's giving Krishna Prema pradayate. And that is his movement actually to make whole world dance and experience the mellows of devotional service. Chari bhava, diya nachamu bhuvana. I will make this whole world dance and experience the mellows of devotional service. And Srimad Bhagavatam is full of such mellows of devotional service. Therefore, he have always relished with his associates like Gadadhar Pandit and Ramananda Rai, Swarup Damodar and others. So, in that line, we'll try to speak from his teachings from Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhakti Rasamrita, Sindhu Nectar of Devotion, on purport of Srimad Bhagavatam. At the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Maharaj Parikshit, the great hero of dynasty, was about to leave body, and he have approached Guru, Shukadeva Goswami, actually the sages originally, and then Shukadeva Goswami was revealed as his Guru. And in that situation we see how actually the acceptance of Guru and learning from Guru is done. Guru Shishya Svikarana and Guru Shishya Parikshana, also the examination of disciple and student, how Maharaj Parikshit is beautifully transferring the transcendental knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. Lord Chaitanya is saying in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Guru Padashraya, Diksha, Gurura Sevana, Sadharma Shiksha Pricha, Sadhu Marganugamana. First take shelter of spiritual master, Guru Padashraya, take initiation, Diksha, serve spiritual master, Gurura Sevana, then Sadharma Shiksha Pricha, inquiring Pricha about transcendental topics, Sadharma, and get instruction, Shiksha, and also follow in the path of great sages. In that way, the hearer or the Shrotra of Srimad Bhagavatam have established the path for all serious disciples in times to come after him. So, the first question which he asked Shukadeva Goswami is very significant. And he is saying, Adha prichami samsiddhim yoginam paramam gurum purushasyeha yat karyam mriyamanasya sarvata. I am therefore begging, Adha prichami samsiddhim, to show the way of perfection, purushasyeha yat karyam, for all persons, purusha, and especially for one who is about to die, mriyamanasya sarvata. So, accepting Guru is not something cheap. Guru should be accepted with utmost seriousness. In that way also, approach in inquiring, we need to be very sober and serious to understand the teachings. And the second question which he asked, Yat shrotavyam ato japyam yat kartavyam nribihi prabho smartavyam bhajaniyam va bruhi yadva viparyayam. Please let me know what man should hear. Yat shrotavyam ato japyam, what he should chant. Yat kartavyam, what he should do or worship. Excuse me. Yes, kartavya. Smartamya, what he should remember also. So in that way, he is prichati, inquiring very confidentially. And of course, this verse reminds us on Upadeshamrita, 4th verse, Guhya Makyati Prichati, the relationship between devotees is also established on confidential revealing the mind and inquiring submissively. Guhya makyati prichati. So that guhya also in this verse of today, it's mentioned hṛdopaguhyārha. The Vaishnava is taking his realizations of Krishna's abode and Krishna deep into his heart, very hidden guhya, hṛdopaguhyā. It's very hidden within his heart. Therefore, Vaishnava is not so much inclined towards debating or discussing, wrangling jalpati, different kinds of philosophies, but he wants to actually always serve Krishna. But in this context, we see that Srila Prabhupada is giving the qualification for such a person. He's saying a pure devotee. We should not mistakenly think that if pure devotee is not discussing, because he's always absorbing in Krishna, and discussions can just disturb his inner sentiment, that doesn't mean that we should not discuss. If we consider ourselves pure devotee, I ask apology for those who have such purity and sentiment for Krishna, but generally devotees should discuss. We are actually by definitions we are Vaishnavas, but we are Vedantavadis. Our philosophy is Achintya Veda, Veda Tattva. It's a kind of a vada which is discussed. So Vaishnavas discuss, but they don't debate among themselves. Vaishnavas can defend the tradition in situations and events like in history, but they generally avoid it because tarko pratishtahat. It's not possible to establish transcendental topics based on logic, tarka. So therefore Vaishnavas generally avoid it and like to hear from self-realized sadhu like Shukadeva Goswami. In understanding this whole event, we should take a few chapters before and after also to understand. We see how the Guru is teaching his Shishya in a progressive pedagogical way, uplifting his consciousness through different darshanas. The first chapter of second canto is showing Bahiranga sadhana, external mean or a meditation on Virat-rupa, but now he is speaking about internal sadhana, antaranga sadhana, the Lord in the heart and the meditation on Him. And especially this part of the chapter, Adhikarana, is speaking about the realization which yogi is having, Bhakti Mishra yogi is having after performing Ashtanga Yoga. Why Bhakti Mishra yogi? Because he have meditated on the form of the Supreme Lord. And some texts before, it's very wonderfully explained the form of the Lord. Usually these, how they called, gatas. In Vedas they are called gatas. Descriptions of the Lord are used for a carving of deities, for a Shilpa Shastra, just like Shri Radha Madhava have been in meditation of Stapati, which is instructed by Shilpa Shastra, and as per instructions he's carving that deity. So when we read those verses like before, a couple of verses, we can relish them and nourish our meditation on Krishna's form. So the yogi is doing the same, but in a secondary way, in a more mechanical way. So we see that Srila Prabhupada is using two words by describing the performer of this sadhana, the transcendentalists who desire to avoid everything godless, and a pure devotee who is in absolute harmony with the Lord. So the transcendentalists who desire to avoid everything godless in this context means Bhakti Mishra Yogi, and can be also a yogi who doesn't have Shantarati, who doesn't have that affection for Krishna. Rati is affection for Krishna. Can be impersonal yogi who is disgusted by material world. As per teachings, the person, when he is experiencing bibhatsa rasa, disgust, naturally he becomes after that peaceful, because nothing stimulates him after that, because no stimulants for the mind, so he becomes peaceful. And after the person becomes disgusted with the whole world, then he comes to the level of Shanta, and he wants to meditate on transcendence. So he wants to avoid everything godless. And in the words of today's words, atat utsisṛkṣavaḥ. Tat means that, etat means this, and atat means opposite to tad, to that. And that is actually Jnana-kanda language. It is Upanishadic language, which explains Lord indirectly, tad, that. Anvaya-vyatireka-bhyam, the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna is explained only him in all Vedic literatures, kevala, either directly or indirectly. Directly means when it's written Krishna or Viṣṇu or Keshava or Damodar, but when it's written Tad Vyatireka, indirectly is describing exactly Krishna. So by reading Upanishads like Shri Upanishad, we should not be confused and think that it's about something else or someone else except Shri Krishna. So atat utsisṛkṣavaḥ, desire to avoid everything godless, Srila Prabhupada says, everything against Krishna consciousness. That is what Srila Prabhupada indicates. So we see how the Srimad Bhagavatam is really nigama kalpataror galitam talam. It is mature fruit of Vedic knowledge. It contains Upanishads also, in Upanishadic teachings. It contains Yoga Shastra, just few verses before. It's Yoga Shastra. It contains Shilpa Shastras. All kinds of scriptures are inside. So the yogi can come to the level of Shanta, but that doesn't mean that it's still Shanta rasa. And therefore, in previous verses, it is described a state called labdopashanti. Labda, he doesn't have desires or, let's say, greeds for material objects, but he doesn't have also for spiritual achievements. He doesn't have attachments, spiritual attachments, asakti. So such a yogi can be impersonalist or personalist. Impersonalist, yogi Brahmavadi, usually the example is of Chatur Kumaras, who have been stimulated by fragrance from the tulasis coming from the feet of Lord Krishna. So they have been stimulated by transcendence, the Krishna Viṣṛya, but not with Prakrita Viṣṛya, with material objects. So they are free from material attachments, but they have been stimulated with transcendental stimulants for devotional service. So the such bhakta is the ashraya, can become ashraya of bhakti. Through yogi process of Ashtanga Yoga, he comes to the favorable situation to execute devotional service because he doesn't have attachments for material world. He can be above anartha nivritti, but doesn't mean that he have a bhakti. Person can become liberated, mukti, but doesn't mean that he have that rati, affection for Krishna, and therefore he doesn't have bhakti. So the process is different. So, but such a devotee can also become a recipient of bhakti. He becomes ashraya vaibhava, ashraya alamban vaibhava. He becomes the person who is the shelter of love of Godhead. This labdopashanti state is different from the rasa experienced in Shanta rasa. The Srimad Bhagavatam later explains svarupo palabdhi state, when person have achieved his svarupa. But such a yogi explained here, he may not be achieving that transcendental position. So, with association with the Lord or with exceptional mercy of Lord Viṣṇu or Krishna, he can become devotee also. So when we meet some yogi, we should not think that he is ordinary person. He is also on indirect path of devotional service, because there is only one yoga, that is bhakti yoga. All other yogas are just limbs of bhakti yoga. I remember one yogi coming here in Sri Mayapur Dham, and he exhibited natural manners of yogi. He was very composed. His anubhavas, well, he's very composed. He likes to be secluded in meditation, read some Upanishadic scriptures. But when I saw him how he dances, that was something amazing. That it's called Udanda Nritya. Srila Prabhupada also used to do Udanda Nritya, jumping like a stick, like a rod. So this yogi was also like that, dancing. I was astonished. Just by seeing, you can see that he is experiencing relishment of bhakti. So such yogis can exist also. And for them usually the object of their meditation and their devotion is four-armed Viṣṇu, who is very peaceful, who is pure, who is equiposed, Shama, who is not partial. So they meditate either on Paramatma or four-armed Lord of Viṣṇu. So in that way they relish their affection for the Lord. So the yogi is progressing in that way, and they usually have some specific symptoms of bhakti, general symptoms of bhakti. Sadharana anubhava is what all devotees in general experience, like dancing and chanting and feeling great jubilation and joy. But there is also specific for each group of devotees, and such a yogis, they like to hear the blowing of the conch, for example, reciting Om, or recitation of Vedas. They like rules and regulations. So it is very important to know how to engage these people in devotional service. I can say, because I was not yogi, but I was thinking I was yogi. No? I was premeditating before bhakti yoga, and I remember coming to one day in temple and being aloof of the world, and my original ashram leader comes, seeing me like meditating, so-called meditating, and he's telling me, come, I have some magic for you, I'll show you some magic. And he gave me a bucket and a broom, and I swept the floor. He said, this is magic floor, fulfills all desires. And actually I was so disturbed by that, because I was, whole my life I was more into books, and I didn't like to act, more being in libraries and like that. But when I did this service, I was so satisfied and ecstatic that I still remember it. Then I realized, oh, this is the difference. That bhakti struck me so much, that till today I didn't remember, for decades. And I didn't forget. So the bhakta can cheat you. You can think you are karmi, jnani, yogi, but bhakta can cheat you spontaneously. For him this was ordinary activity, but that experience was so magical. And I'm still trying to sweep the floor to fulfill desires and be engaged in service of Shri Radha Madhava. So we need to know how to engage different kinds of devotees in devotional service. And in Bhakti Rasamrita is explained that these yogis, they have two kinds of ratis which they develop: Sama Shantarati and Sandra Shantarati. Sama Shantarati is when yogi is indirectly desiring to experience the presence of Lord Krishna. He's praying, oh, when will I see your wonderful form? And when he experiences really that Lord's form like Dhruva Maharaj did, then this is Sandra Shantarati. He achieved that affection, and his joy was much more than any kind of impersonal meditation. So from that rati, rasa can only begin. If there is no rati affection, there cannot be bhava in devotional service, and bhava is the prerequisite for rasa. So devotee should try to develop through practice his rati for Krishna, the affection for Krishna. And what we actually practice, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, regulated practice of devotional service, is exactly this. If we don't do that, we miss whole point of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. It's a very important point, because it's Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and bhakti is that, it's affection for Krishna. So if we don't think about how to please his senses, then we are missing the point of sadhana bhakti, and we will not be progressing towards raga, raganuga sadhana bhakti. It is also spontaneous practice. Devotee is still practicing devotional service, but spontaneously. It said, shastra ragyaya hina. There is no need for injunctions or orders of scriptures. So Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is to bring us closer to affection for Krishna, and in raganuga sadhana bhakti, the person is desiring to follow in the footsteps of specific devotee of Vraja. Someone who is having that anuraga, ragatmika bhakti, natural tendency of living being is to have the spontaneous love for Krishna. So that is the difference of yogic path and bhakti path also. The yogi is progressing technically, mechanically, but only if he meets devotee, he can be uplifted. But if he doesn't meet devotee, or there is no some extraordinary mercy of Lord Krishna, then he cannot become devotee. But devotee who have met a devotee, bhaktya sanjata, bhaktya, he starts to practice direct path of devotional service immediately. Both of paths are internal and direct. Yogi is also finally directly meditating on the Lord, but one is more emotional and engaging our emotions, but another one is disengaging our emotions. Because in yoga, material emotions, prakrita bhava, is disturbing the peace of mind of a yogi, and therefore it's not useful for such meditation. But in bhakti, the devotee is meditating on transcendental emotion. It said seva dhyana. He is meditating on service to Krishna and how to please him with affection. So although these two paths are different, they have so many similarities also. And we see our path prescribed in Upadeshamrita is having some yogic elements, like vacho vegam, controlling the urge to speak, manasa vegam, the mental urge, krodha vegam, the urge for anger, jihva, udara, upasta vegam, the urges of tongue, belly and genitals, are controlled mechanically also, especially for Vaidhi sadhaka. So the elements of yoga are also there. Atyaharam, it's also yogic element. Atyahara, prayasa, prajalpa, niyamagraha, janasanga, lolyamcha, all this seems as mechanical control. Of course, later, devotee, when he develops his bhakti, then it's easier to control his desires, and if desires are controlled, there is no need to control his urges, because urges are very weak or they fully diminish. So the devotee is following also some parts of yoga, but we should not be confused and think that only anartha nivritti should be done, because without artha pravritti, our path will be very dry. Artha pravritti means to follow the path of achieving some good values in life. And what is that good value? It's Shuddha Bhakti. So if we follow that path, naturally all other things will be included. And finally, only Bhakti Yoga includes all other elements. The Karma Yoga, devotee serves the Lord, means he's doing the action. Jnana Yoga, he is in knowledge of Sambandha Jnana, the relationship with Krishna. Dhyana Yoga, how he meditates on the form of the Lord. And finally, the love. So if we want to please someone, we will use all other limbs. For example, if we want to give some gift to someone, the emotion is expressed through karma, through jnana, by knowing him, to meditating on his needs. So only bhakti is complete yoga. And finally, there is only one yoga, that is prema bhakti yoga. The residents of Vraja, they also are in full yoga with Krishna, but in most pleasant way, because they always serve Krishna in wonderful ways. So from this verse we can take also how devotee is meditating on the Lord. Smarana. Smarana is one of the limbs of devotional service, and the progress of smarana is smarana, dharana, dhyana, dhruvanusmriti, and samadhi. Smarana means that when one is concentrating on the object of his perception. Dharana, when he holds very tightly for that object. We can apply this in nama smarana, nama dhyan, mantra dhyan, or in rupa dhyan. Then he said krida dhyan or seva dhyan, how to meditate on the name of the Lord, how to meditate on the form of the Lord, on his playful activities, or on service to Krishna. So dharana, dhyana, dhruvanusmriti. Dhruvanusmriti is when smriti, remembrance, is thick like honey is dripping, or oil is very condensed. So the meditation is also very condensed. The chanting, for example, of holy name is very intense. And finally, samadhi, person is absorbed only in object of meditation. He doesn't think that he is dhyatri, I am the meditator. He doesn't think there is dhyana, I am meditating. He just knows there is dhyeya, the object of meditation. So that is what all of us are desiring. And in Upadeshamrita, Srila Rupa Goswami wonderfully instructs us tannama rupa charitadi sukirtananu smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya tishtan vraje tadanuragi vrajananugami kalam niyojit akilam ityupadesha saram. The essence of all instructions is to always chant Sukirtana. It's wonderful, beautiful kirtan. Nama rupa, tannama rupa guna charitadi, on the name, qualities, character and etc. of Krishna. Smrityo kramena, to remember his daily pastimes. Rasana manasi niyoja, and to connect our tongue and our mind. Sevonmukhe hi jihvadau swayameva spuratyadaha. The Lord will be manifest through seva unmukha jihva, through service rendered by tongue, rasana. And how Tishtan Vraje, being established in the Dham of Vraja, in the association of person who have that affection for Krishna already, tad anuragi jananugami. That anuragi, we need to find such a person. And with him chant and remember with Krishna. His follower, jananugami, means his raganuga bhakta, elevated devotee, minimum madhyama, high, medium, madhyama bhakta, uttama madhyama, who have that affection for Krishna. That is the essence of all instructions. And in that way we can very quickly progress, and that is the path established in the Srimad Bhagavatam and condensed in the teachings of Vaishnavacharyas. So the Shukadeva Goswami in these verses is indirectly speaking about yogi who is meditating on Lord and later achieving bhakti, and on the later part of the chapter he's speaking about direct devotional service, and again answering the original question of Maharaj Parikshit, yat shrotavyam, yat smartavyam, yat kirtitavyam, yat kartavyam, what should I do, what should I chant, what should I remember, and then he's again answering him, tasmad sarvatmana rajan hari sarvatra sarvada Shrotavya kirtitavyascha smartavyo bhagavan rinam. O king, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify and remember the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Sarvatra sarvada. Pibanti ye bhagavatatmanam satatam katamritam shravana puteshu sambritam punanti te vishaya vidushitashayam vrajanti tacharana saroruhantikam. Those who drink through oral reception fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the Personality of Godhead. With this glorification, I will finish, and thank you very much for your kind attention. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We have enough time for one very short question and one very short answer. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Excellent session. Just one query. In the session you were explaining about sadhana. In that you mentioned internal sadhana and external sadhana. Can you please explain what is internal sadhana and external sadhana, how it is performed?
For yogi or for devotee?
Both will be clarified.
Time is expiring. So generally for devotees, on the higher level, the sadhana means doing their sadhana, antar sadhana in siddha deha, and external is in sadhaka deha. Sadhaka deha is shravana, kirtana, but internal sadhaka deha sadhana is Radha Krishna Charan Sevana. It's Chaitanya Charitamrita explaining, but it's not possible to the level of bhava, but devotee, even on the path of bhakti, in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, must cultivate internal affection for Krishna, attachment for Krishna, asakti, because as we know, the 9 stages of devotional service are actually not stages, because we can experience by Lord's mercy some of these drops even in path of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So devotee also internally needs to cultivate that raga. Externally he follows all rules and regulations, but internally he needs to develop a desire to please Krishna. Krishna India priticha dare premanam, because we don't understand now, but we actually practice prema bhakti. There is only one bhakti, that's prema bhakti. So, of course, we cannot imitate this, but we practice through Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and Raganuga sadhana bhakti, we practice prema bhakti. So devotee needs to have internal sadhana by offering prayers, by meditating on the Lord's smarana, smrityo kramena. And for the yogi, all the way till pratyahara. Some pratyahara is external, removing attention from the sense objects, and then becomes internal on dharana when he holds for the object of meditation. So in general that's it, and we have just passed our time. But I would be more than glad to answer after the class. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, so we'll finish this. If there is any question, we'll answer after also. Thank you so much. And Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo.